We are back for another episode of Dragon Ball Daima, and we're back for another video on the channel. I know it's been about 2 weeks almost, something like that. Maybe a little under 2 weeks, maybe a little over by the time this video comes out. But done moving, so that's all said and done. But that's pretty much what was taking so long on videos and content. But Daima episode 13. So here's the thing. A lot of folks are already kind of denouncing this episode, mostly because they're saying it's like a GT episode, which I get. So, like GT, for example, there's a couple of there's one episode in particular where they visit an island where it's got, I don't know if it was full of giants or if it had just a giant. I want to say it was like a giant world, like everything was big and they were small. And this is a similar concept, but one thing that's interesting, which we'll get into in a bit, is the way that it chooses to handle the flow of that versus the way GT chose to handle the flow of that. So we start out, and we're continuing what King Goma said. We're at the end of the last episode, where he's like, all right, that settles it. He's going to, jump into action. Well, basically, he shuts down Warp, which is kind of crazy. I didn't even know that was possible, but they shut him down. So nobody can use him to get to the first demon realm, which is kind of like, uh-oh, what are they going to do now? Like, what is going to happen? But we don't really see much else from that as we end up going back to Goku and the gang as they're having ship issues again. They end up having to crash land on this planet where it's again a bunch of giant people and giant animals and giant things. In fact, there's a dog that causes them problems for a little bit, and there's a scene where Goku like lands on top of the dog, and the dog is so big he's in the fur, and he finds the fleas in there, the dog's fleas, and the fleas are like even bigger than Goku. But basically the ship's having issues again, and they end up having to crash land. And they're on this giant planet, and they're not sure what's going on. They're not sure where they are. One thing that's cool is we get another piece of lore tidbit where apparently there's this core. It's this giant core called... What is it called here? Modulite. Modulite. And it's like this giant core that basically has the power to... It's like a super battery. Basically has the power to charge, like, for example, a spaceship for 30 years on a single charge, apparently. Which is pretty crazy. And I hope we get to see more of that kind of stuff later on. But we see Goku and the gang as they kind of get, like, attacked by these giant mice, or these giant gerbils, which are totes adorbs, to be honest. Goku kind of tosses with them for a bit, and then they kind of go scurrying away, and that's when we see this giant, but apparently the giant is just a kid. He's just a kid coming home from school, apparently. And he's the big bad of this episode. The animation, and this is where I say it handled it differently from, say, for example, your average GT episode. The animation in this episode is crazy. For honestly, if I'm being honest, I would consider this a very not important episode. Not really. There's not really a lot that happens. There's not really anything that majorly gets done. This is kind of a very non-important episode. So the fact that the animation is so on point here is crazy. There's a scene where the dog is getting ready to attack Bulma and Co. as they're flying away on the spaceship, and Goku's trying to fly to catch him off, but Goku's not going to get there fast enough, which this is what I find interesting. So Goku stops and chooses to fire a Kamehameha instead, and the Kamehameha beats him there. So it's interesting that I guess the speed of a Kamehameha is faster than Goku flying, at least this version of Kid Goku. So I find that very interesting. There was a lot of moments in this episode where I kept asking myself, like, man, is Goku going to turn Super Saiyan or what? Because there's a lot of moments where he's struggling, and I'm like, dude, just come on, man, turn into a Super Saiyan. And it happens. towards the end. But man, what a dude! He basically turns Super Saiyan inside of his bag, and then we see Goku do this sick like flip out, kind of like my background here, and he with the Nyoibo, and he starts clashing with the guy and his ruler, and man, I'm telling you, the animation did not need to be so good this episode, and it just was crazy. It just went super, super hard. But basically, he ends up kind of saving the day. They end up escaping from the giant before he's able to do too much damage. And if I recall, I think they just escape. Oh yeah, and he tells them about the other planet, which I'm assuming is going to have to play a role. It's going to have to. I mean, or else this episode really was just kind of, I don't want to call it pointless, but it had to have been a lead up for that. But yeah. So basically, they fly out, and they're entering this field where things start lighting up. And it's almost like a light show. Almost looks like a bit of a light show. I'm not sure where they're heading. Or what's going on. But that's kind of where the episode ends. Overall, I had a lot of fun with this episode. I actually had more fun with this episode than a lot of the other Daima episodes. And that's not to say the other Daima episodes weren't fun or anything like that. But this one was really cranked up on the adventure aspect, as well as, again, not a lot happened on this episode. Not really a lot happened as far as progressing the plot is concerned. And yet, I didn't feel bored. I didn't feel like I was losing my time. I didn't feel any of that. I thought it was a great episode. But what's most important is, what do you guys think? Did you guys like this week's episode? Did you guys dislike it? Leave that in the comment description box down below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next Dragon Ball Daima review. Bye. Thanks so much to Ryan Wilkins, Kame Sennin, and Susan Simone for all becoming members. If you would also like to become a member, on my channel there exists multiple different tier levels, and you can pick out which one is best for you.